This is If My People Bible Reading, part 166. It is entitled The Beginning and the End of Our Nation. And we're coming to the end of the Old Covenant here. We have Malachi and Nehemiah left to go before we get in the New Covenant. And so it's an appropriate time that I just make mention this. Noah Webster, a book that I've had for used for so many numerous uh, definitions and understandings of everything. Noah uh, began writing this in 1821, and 7 years later he finished it and produced it and published it in 1828. And Noah's 1828 dictionary was a dedication, and it was dedicated to the Christian students of America. Now, he meant Judeo-Christian. He meant those who believe in Yahweh, those who believe in uh, Yeshua. That's what he meant. And the understanding, so the understanding of a Christian and Christian churches in those days, he was very concerned about. He was seeing a change take place because people were fighting against Noah, and Noah had to fight very hard to get his point across. And so he sat down and wrote an extensive, I'll show you real quick here, extensive dictionary of the English language. Now you notice at the bottom it says 1828. This is not N-O-T capitalized, not what you see and you get bookstores today. You have to hunt and find this dictionary. This dictionary is dedicated to all Christian education, all of for the lawyers and the those studying the Constitution and legal, and for Congress and for Senate and for the Supreme Court. He thought it was very necessary because he saw something big taking place in education. Even back then, he was concerned about the education of students. Students back then, prior and before Noah, were educated into. You go into a one-room schoolhouse, and you have all the kids from 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Usually around 16, they were done. The education of a child was completed mostly before the age of 14. As a matter of fact, kids in the fifth grade back then were learning, fifth grade, were learning the math and science and physics and the English and the writing, compositions, history, civics, which they don't teach today, by the fifth grade. That is superior to the 12th grade students today. Superior. 12th grade students today could not pass a fifth grade graduation test. Cannot. That's how stupid and dumbed down the United States has gotten. So this is called the end of the age of the United States. And the reason I'm saying this is Noah was extremely concerned. And so he dedicated, his background is incredible. He was related directly to William Bradford of the Plymouth Plantation, if you remember Bradford. Plymouth Rock, remember that? He mentions in his foreword, he has a foreword of a comment made by George Washington about when George Washington was done with his 8 years. He said two is enough, and there was no rule in those days. But George decided that this is a good time to go, and he blessed the nation. He said this nation must grasp all these things that Noah was trying to get a point. And the point across was that no school should be separated from the word. The word, not religions, not crazy religion stuff, the word. Because they had Baptists and they had Methodists and they had Catholics back in those days, and they didn't agree hardly on anything, and it's even worse today. But one of the things where he saw was the enemy is a schoolhouse concept that we have all over the nation today, and it's out of control, totally out of control. I worked over 40 solid years in schools, colleges, higher institutions. Drake University even taught a class there. They're out of control. And the arrogance and the stupidity that has taken over the education system in the United States, the public education, not talking about the private. There was a style that's called Horace Mann. Horace Mann was a real individual. This guy, where did he go to get his intellect? He went to England, he went to Europe, he went all over, and he took the worst socialist, left-wing, communist kind of behavior you can come up with. They didn't even have the word communist, socialist names in those days, but that's what was being shoved down the educators in those days, not the governments, the educators. And look what happened as it rolled through in the last 100 and so years. Look what's happened to Europe. The United States is nothing but a forward look of what was 100 years ago in Europe. We're about 50, 60 years behind. We're catching up as quick as we can move into a left-wing communist world. But Horace Mann and his style of education is the very evil of what Noah Webster. What was one of the icons to remove faith, remove the understanding of a definition. Words mean things. So to take the very words and definitions of what is reality and truth for thousands of years and just throw it away and invent something new and come up with acronyms and come up with synonyms and come up with something slang words so that you start separating one race and cult and creed from another. So that one kind of a class of people talk with certain kind of slang that only they can understand, and that makes them separate from another class of people. And pretty soon you have 40, 50, 60, 70, 200 and different 70, 252 different classes of people in the United States, not races, classes that do not get along with each other. You have nothing but people that hate what other people think. It's not that they can think whatever they want and that's okay. No, no, no. No, I hate you because you don't you don't agree with me. And that's exactly what Noah Webster was talking about. So he created a Bible of his own, but he kept it for himself. But the dictionary is for everyone. And so this was published, and Noah was a lexicographer. And here's just something about him. Noah, a lexicographer, claimed to have coined only one word in the entire dictionary that he invented. He invented the word demoralize, demoralize, which he defined to corrupt or undermine the morals of, to destroy or lessen the effect of moral principles on, and to render corrupt in morals. Well, today the field of lexicography has been demoralized by those who would make contemporary usage and slang and standard the reference for students in our schools, and that American slang and dictionaries. And matter of fact, all dictionaries are now in slang. Every 4 or 5, 6 years they change the dictionary because they put in new words. Like newbie is an example. Didn't exist, but now it exists in the library. It changes and changes and changes, and the new dictionaries that are put out have all these slangs in it. And away goes the words and language that have existed for thousands of years, no longer there. So if you get a American Dictionary of the English Language by Noah Webster, it will be totally corrupted and has been changed numerous times. The 1828 edition would be perfect for today, perfect for an educator in school to learn a dictionary, the Bible, civics lessons, historical lessons, science, more math applied in physics, and writing styles and speaking styles, morals and values, all there You don't need the hundreds and hundreds of books that you get as teachers do. When I was an instructor for many years, I received, I started off in 1979. I mean, I think there were 300 to 350 book publishing agencies back then. In 1998, I was dealing with six. Six. Prentice Hall was the one I dealt with more than anything else. It went down from hundreds and hundreds to six. These days, they're all plagiarized. Everything is plagiarized, one from another. There's no authentic anything. It's just if somebody plagiarizes and comes up with a bunch of nonsense in one book, another book company comes along and publishes it too, and they claim the same thing. That's how bad it's gotten. So before we finish the Old Covenant with this 613 Torah laws, I'm telling you point blank that the book of Hebrews says there's newer and better Torah. Newer and better Torah. And it means every word it says. And so that the Ten Commandments, the royal Torah, the covenants with Abraham, all that will exist forever. The feast and festivals, the appointed times, all that will exist on the face of this earth until Yeshua destroys it, his Father destroys it, and the new heaven and the earth comes down. It will exist. However, the 1050, and that's what's going to make this Bible, I'm on my third edition on this one already, on If My People Bible. It contains the 1050 commands, Torah commands we're going to go through. So when I get into New Covenant, what I'm going to do online here on If My People Bible reading, you're going to go into the New Covenant, and every single time I find the Torah command, I'm going to read it to you. I'm going to make sure this is Torah. And so you can't say you're not under the law anymore. Paul meant that the laws were not under, such as a couple hundred laws dealing with ceremonial sacrificing of bloody animals on the temple grounds. There's one right there. Somebody walking around picking up sticks on a Shabbat, and you go there and stone him to death. Stephen being accused of one thing or another, and they're going to stone him. A woman being accused of adultery, and they're going to stone her. Yeah, that was about as Torah as nothing, because that's a joke. You cannot stone a woman even under Torah in those days, because you have to stone the man. The woman was accused, and Yeshua says, "You woman." He forgave her. Why? Because the multiple men, which, by the way, Yeshua wrote their names down in the sand, starting with the first guy who was with her. If you want to figure out what was Yeshua writing in the sand, in the dirt, what did he write? He was writing down Jim, Bob, Sam, Pete, and they all knew who was there first, and so they all walked off. That's what we're not under anymore. My goodness, we don't have to have an argument. We don't have to be thrown out of churches because we're bringing that up as a fact. And the Hebrew roots, they don't have to argue with each other back and forth over these trivial little matters. To me, it's like the simplest thing in the world. But we need a book of definitions on what is a definition of anything. Words mean things. So this guy here, the United States began falling apart in 1821 when he sat down and started writing this dictionary. He thought it was very necessary. He gave his life to this dictionary. And by 1840 to 1870, all the crazy Christian religions, Christian sciences, and all this stuff about rapture theory and all that started. Noah saw it coming, and yet he was practically alone. But he stuck to his truth. And so by the time of 1960, with Brown versus the Board of Education, where you can't even bring the Bible into a school anymore, you can talk about all kinds of pagan everything else, but you can't talk about the word of Yahweh. That was not. I was brought up and I was finally taught that's the beginning of the loss of everything in the schools in the United States. No, it's not. It began in 1821. He finished it in 1828, and he failed because look what's happened to the United States today. All right. Now we're going to go into the book of Malachi, and we'll finish you out. Stay strong, and don't ever back down.